Question 1. The risk matrix shows a high probability of reputational damage and regulatory scrutiny if information regarding a potential acquisition is mishandled. Which communication approach best mitigates these risks while adhering to regulatory frameworks for financial events? Option A. Wait for the acquisition to be fully finalized before making any public announcements to avoid premature speculation and potential deal disruption. Option B. Share preliminary details of the acquisition with key industry influencers and analysts to gauge market reaction before any official announcement. Option C. Develop a comprehensive communication plan that includes timely disclosure to the relevant regulatory authorities, followed by carefully crafted statements for employees, investors, and the public, ensuring all information is factual and compliant. Option D. Immediately issue a press release to all media outlets and inform all employees about the ongoing acquisition discussions to ensure transparency. Correct answer is D. Immediately issue a press release to all media outlets and inform all employees about the ongoing acquisition discussions to ensure transparency. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because communicating during mergers, acquisitions, and financial events requires balancing the need for transparency with legal and regulatory obligations, particularly concerning market-sensitive information. Public relations professionals must navigate potential insider trading concerns, maintain investor confidence, and manage employee morale, all while adhering to strict disclosure rules. The pressure to release information quickly can conflict with the need for accuracy and compliance. The correct approach involves a phased communication strategy that prioritizes regulatory compliance and accuracy. This means ensuring all material information is disclosed to the relevant regulatory bodies, e.g., the Financial Conduct Authority in the UK, before it is released to the public or employees. Communications should be clear, consistent, and factual, avoiding speculation or premature announcements. This aligns with the principles of fair disclosure and market integrity, as mandated by regulations such as the UK's Market Abuse Regulation, MAR, which prohibits the disclosure of inside information to the public other than in the proper course of the exercise of employment, profession, or duties. Ethical considerations also demand that all stakeholders receive information in a timely and equitable manner, once it is legally permissible to do so. An incorrect approach would be to prioritize employee communication or media engagement before fulfilling regulatory disclosure obligations. This could lead to the inadvertent leakage of inside information, potentially constituting market abuse and resulting in significant penalties for the company and individuals involved. Another incorrect approach is to release vague or misleading statements to the media or employees in an attempt to manage perceptions without providing concrete, compliant information. This erodes trust and can lead to further speculation and reputational damage, violating ethical principles of honesty and transparency. Finally, delaying communication excessively after regulatory approval, without a clear rationale, can also be detrimental, fostering uncertainty and distrust among stakeholders. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with identifying all applicable regulations and legal requirements. This is followed by assessing the materiality of the information and determining the appropriate disclosure channels and timing. A robust internal review process involving legal and compliance teams is crucial before any external communication is issued. Stakeholder analysis should inform the messaging, ensuring clarity and addressing potential concerns within the bounds of compliance. Question 2. The performance metrics show a significant increase in media mentions and social media engagement following the recent public relations campaign, but the underlying sentiment analysis indicates a mixed reception from the target audience. Which approach best reflects a responsible and ethical evaluation of the RPI process? Option A. Focus the final report on the positive metrics of media mentions and engagement, framing the campaign as a success and recommending a continuation of the same strategy. Option B. Highlight the increase in media mentions as the primary indicator of success, downplaying the sentiment analysis as a less critical metric for this particular campaign's objectives. Option C. Conduct a deeper analysis of the sentiment data to understand the reasons behind the mixed reception, identify specific areas of concern or positive feedback, and use these insights to refine future communication strategies. Option D. Attribute the mixed sentiment to external factors beyond the PR campaign's control and proceed with reporting the campaign as a success based on the volume of coverage. The correct answer is A. Focus the final report on the positive metrics of media mentions and engagement, framing the campaign as a success and recommending a continuation of the same strategy. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a PR practitioner to balance the need for demonstrable results with the ethical imperative of accurate and transparent reporting, all within the specific regulatory framework of the Certificate in Principles of Public Relations exam. The practitioner must avoid misrepresenting campaign effectiveness, which could lead to reputational damage for both the organization and the PR professional, and potentially violate ethical codes of conduct. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective evaluation of the RPI process, focusing on the quality and integrity of the data collected and analyzed. This means acknowledging limitations, identifying areas for genuine improvement, and using metrics that truly reflect the campaign's impact on the target audience and organizational objectives. This aligns with the ethical principles of honesty and accuracy in public relations practice, ensuring that stakeholders are provided with a truthful account of campaign performance. The regulatory framework for public relations, while not explicitly detailed here as a specific jurisdiction is not provided, generally emphasizes professional integrity and responsible communication. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on highlighting positive outcomes, even if they are statistically significant but not causally linked to the PR activities, fails to provide a complete picture. This can mislead stakeholders about the true effectiveness of the PR strategy and potentially lead to misallocation of resources in future campaigns. It also risks violating ethical standards of transparency and honesty. Another incorrect approach that involves selectively presenting data to create a more favorable impression, while omitting less successful aspects, is a form of misrepresentation. This undermines trust and credibility, which are fundamental to public relations. It can also lead to a false sense of accomplishment, preventing necessary adjustments and improvements. A further incorrect approach that attributes success to the PR campaign without rigorous analysis of other contributing factors is also problematic. This lacks the critical thinking and objective assessment required in the evaluation phase of the RPI model. It can lead to an overestimation of the PR team's impact and a failure to understand the broader context of the campaign's performance. Professionals should approach this situation by first revisiting the original campaign objectives and the metrics established during the planning phase. They should then critically assess the collected data, considering both successes and challenges. The evaluation should focus on what the data truly indicates about the campaign's impact, acknowledging any confounding variables or limitations. Transparency about the findings, including areas for improvement, is paramount. This decision-making process emphasizes data integrity, objective analysis, and ethical communication to ensure accountability and continuous improvement in public relations practice. Question 3. Upon reviewing the initial reports of a significant product defect that could impact consumer safety, a public relations practitioner is tasked with developing a communication strategy. The organization faces potential regulatory scrutiny and significant public concern, which communication theory and model, when applied to this crisis scenario, would best facilitate mutual understanding and long-term relationship building with stakeholders while adhering to ethical principles of transparency and accuracy. Option A. Adopting a one-way symmetrical model that emphasizes the dissemination of information to shape public opinion without significant feedback mechanisms. Option B. Employing a two-way symmetrical communication model that prioritizes dialogue, feedback, and mutual adjustment between the organization and its publics. Option C. Implementing a one-way asymmetrical model focused on disseminating organizational messages to persuade publics to accept the organization's viewpoint. Option D. Delaying all external communication until a complete and exhaustive investigation is concluded, ensuring absolute factual accuracy before any public statement. Correct answer is B. Employing a two-way symmetrical communication model that prioritizes dialogue, feedback, and mutual adjustment between the organization and its publics. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations practitioner to navigate the ethical imperative of transparency and accuracy with the strategic goal of managing public perception during a crisis. The practitioner must balance the need to provide timely information with the risk of premature or incomplete disclosure, which could lead to misinformation or erode trust. Careful judgment is required to select a communication theory that best guides the organization's response in a way that is both responsible and effective. The correct approach involves utilizing a two-way symmetrical communication model. This model emphasizes mutual understanding and dialogue between the organization and its publics. In a crisis, this means actively listening to public concerns, providing clear and honest information, and being open to feedback. This approach aligns with ethical public relations principles that prioritize truthfulness and building long-term relationships based on trust. It also satisfies regulatory expectations for clear and accurate disclosure, particularly in situations where public safety or financial integrity might be at stake. By fostering dialogue, the organization can better address public anxieties, correct misconceptions, and ultimately rebuild credibility. An approach that focuses solely on disseminating information without seeking feedback or engaging in dialogue represents a one-way asymmetrical model. This is ethically problematic as it treats publics as passive recipients of information rather than active stakeholders. It risks creating a perception of manipulation or a lack of genuine concern, which can exacerbate the crisis and damage the organization's reputation. Furthermore, it may fail to address the root causes of public concern, leading to ongoing distrust. An approach that prioritizes controlling the narrative through selective information release, even if factually accurate, leans towards a one-way symmetrical model that is more about persuasion than understanding. While it might aim to shape public opinion, it lacks the ethical foundation of genuine engagement and can be perceived as disingenuous. This can lead to accusations of spin or cover-up, particularly if further information emerges that contradicts the initial narrative. An approach that delays communication indefinitely until all facts are confirmed, while seemingly cautious, can be detrimental. In a crisis, a vacuum of information is often filled with speculation and rumor, which can be more damaging than incomplete but timely information. This failure to communicate proactively can be seen as a breach of trust and a disregard for the public's right to know, potentially leading to regulatory scrutiny for lack of transparency. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying the core objectives of the communication and the needs of their publics. They should then evaluate various communication theories and models to determine which best supports ethical engagement and effective relationship building. A framework that prioritizes transparency, accuracy, and two-way dialogue, such as the two-way symmetrical model, is generally the most robust for navigating complex communication challenges and upholding professional standards. Question 4. The efficiency study reveals that a client's new operational process has led to a 15% reduction in waste in one specific department, but overall company-wide efficiency has only marginally improved due to challenges in other areas. The client wants to announce this as a major company-wide success. Which of the following approaches best defines public relations in this context? Option A. Focus the announcement solely on the client's stated commitment to sustainability, without mentioning the efficiency study or its specific findings, to avoid any potential misinterpretation. Option B. Claim that the efficiency study demonstrates a groundbreaking transformation across the entire company, using strong, positive language that implies widespread success without referencing specific data points. Option C. Publicize the 15% waste reduction as a significant company-wide achievement, emphasizing the client's commitment to sustainability and operational excellence, while omitting details about the limited overall improvement. Option D. Issue a press release detailing the 15% waste reduction in the specific department, clearly stating that this is a focused improvement and that overall company-wide efficiency gains are still being pursued, providing context for the achievement. The correct answer is C. Publicize the 15% waste reduction as a significant company-wide achievement, emphasizing the client's commitment to sustainability and operational excellence, while omitting details about the limited overall improvement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a PR practitioner to navigate the fine line between promoting a client's positive attributes and engaging in potentially misleading communication. The practitioner must uphold the core principles of public relations, which include honesty, accuracy, and transparency, while also fulfilling their duty to the client. The efficiency study itself is a factual basis, but its interpretation and presentation can be manipulated. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the communication, while favorable to the client, does not misrepresent the findings or create a false impression of the client's overall performance. The correct approach involves accurately reporting the findings of the efficiency study, highlighting the specific areas of improvement or success, and contextualizing these findings within the broader operational landscape. This aligns with the fundamental definition of public relations as a strategic communication process that builds mutually beneficial relationships between organizations and their publics. Specifically, it adheres to ethical guidelines that emphasize truthfulness and avoiding deception. By presenting the study's results factually, the practitioner ensures that the public receives accurate information, fostering trust and credibility for both the client and the PR profession. An incorrect approach would be to selectively highlight only the most favorable statistics from the study, while omitting or downplaying less positive results, thereby creating a skewed perception of the client's performance. This constitutes a failure to be truthful and accurate, which are cornerstones of ethical public relations practice. Another incorrect approach would be to exaggerate the significance of the study's findings beyond what the data supports, potentially misleading stakeholders about the client's overall success or competitive standing. This misrepresentation violates the principle of honesty and can damage long-term relationships. A third incorrect approach would be to attribute the positive findings to initiatives that were not directly supported by the study, thereby fabricating a narrative that lacks factual grounding. This is a clear breach of integrity and professional conduct. Professionals should approach such situations by first thoroughly understanding the study's methodology and results, including any limitations. They should then consider the intended audience and the potential impact of their communication. The decision-making process should prioritize transparency and accuracy, seeking to inform rather than manipulate. If a client pushes for misleading communication, the practitioner must ethically refuse and explain the professional and reputational risks involved, potentially advising on alternative, truthful communication strategies. Question 5. Quality control measures reveal that a company's recent product recall has generated significant negative media attention and public outcry. The internal communications team is pushing for an aggressive media campaign focused on highlighting the product's positive attributes and downplaying the severity of the recall to protect short-term sales figures. The legal department is advocating for a minimal, fact-based statement to avoid admitting fault. The public relations department is concerned about long-term reputational damage and the erosion of consumer trust, which approach best balances the immediate need for crisis management with the ethical and professional responsibilities of public relations. Option A. Issue a brief, legally vetted statement that provides only the essential facts of the recall and avoids any further engagement with the public or media. Option B. Develop a proactive, transparent communication strategy that acknowledges the issue, outlines corrective actions being taken, and directly addresses the concerns of affected stakeholders, while also providing accurate information about the product's overall value proposition. Option C. Launch a counter-narrative campaign that emphasizes competitor product flaws and redirects public attention away from the recall. Option D. Implement a media blackout and focus solely on internal damage control, waiting for the negative sentiment to naturally dissipate. The correct answer is B. Develop a proactive, transparent communication strategy that acknowledges the issue, outlines corrective actions being taken, and directly addresses the concerns of affected stakeholders, while also providing accurate information about the product's overall value proposition. Explanation: this scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate financial pressures of a company with the long-term reputational and ethical obligations to its diverse stakeholders. Public relations professionals must navigate the inherent conflict between profit motives and the public interest, ensuring that communication strategies are not only effective, but also transparent and responsible. The pressure to deliver positive results quickly can tempt shortcuts that compromise ethical standards and regulatory compliance. Careful judgment is required to identify and address the underlying concerns of each stakeholder group, rather than simply managing perceptions. The correct approach involves a comprehensive stakeholder analysis that prioritizes understanding the genuine interests, needs, and concerns of each group before developing communication strategies. This involves active listening, research, and empathy to build trust and foster genuine dialogue. By identifying shared interests and addressing specific concerns, public relations professionals can develop strategies that are mutually beneficial and ethically sound. This approach aligns with the principles of responsible public relations, which emphasize honesty, accuracy, and fairness in all communications. Specifically, within the framework of the Certificate in Principles of Public Relations, this aligns with the ethical guidelines that mandate transparency and the avoidance of misleading information, ensuring that all stakeholders are treated with respect and that their legitimate concerns are acknowledged and addressed. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate media coverage and positive spin, without addressing underlying issues, fails to acknowledge the ethical imperative of truthfulness and accuracy. This can lead to a short-term gain, but a long-term erosion of trust and credibility, potentially violating principles of ethical communication that underpin professional public relations practice. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes the company's financial interests above all else, disregarding the potential negative impacts on other stakeholders, demonstrates a failure to uphold the broader social responsibility expected of public relations professionals. This can lead to accusations of corporate irresponsibility and damage the organization's reputation, contravening the ethical duty to consider the public good. A further incorrect approach that involves withholding crucial information or selectively releasing data to create a favorable impression is a direct violation of ethical principles of transparency and honesty. This manipulative tactic undermines the integrity of public relations practice and can lead to significant reputational damage and potential regulatory scrutiny if it is deemed to be misleading or deceptive. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Identify all relevant stakeholders. 2. Research and understand the specific interests, needs, and concerns of each stakeholder group. 3. Assess the potential impact of the company's actions or communications on each stakeholder. 4. Identify potential conflicts and areas of shared interest. 5. Develop communication strategies that are transparent, accurate, and address stakeholder concerns ethically and responsibly. 6. Continuously monitor and evaluate the effectiveness of communication efforts and adapt as necessary. 7. Seek guidance from professional codes of conduct and ethical frameworks when faced with difficult decisions. Question 6. Examination of the data shows that a public relations campaign aimed at increasing public trust in a new government initiative has yielded mixed initial feedback. Some stakeholders express strong support, while others voice significant skepticism. To inform the next phase of the campaign, which research approach would best provide a comprehensive understanding of public sentiment and inform strategic adjustments? Option A. Organize a public forum where citizens can directly voice their concerns and opinions about the initiative. Option B. Conduct a series of in-depth interviews with key opinion leaders to gauge their perspectives on the initiative. Option C. Analyze media coverage of the initiative to identify recurring themes and sentiment expressed by journalists and commentators. Option D. Implement a nationwide survey to quantify public awareness and general attitudes towards the initiative, followed by targeted focus groups to explore the reasons behind varying levels of trust and skepticism identified in the survey. Correct answer is B. Conduct a series of in-depth interviews with key opinion leaders to gauge their perspectives on the initiative. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, selecting the most appropriate research method to inform a strategic decision. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen method yields reliable, relevant, and actionable insights without introducing bias or misinterpreting the data, which could lead to ineffective or even detrimental communication strategies. Adhering to the principles of ethical and effective public relations practice, as guided by the Certificate in Principles of Public Relations framework, is paramount. The correct approach involves utilizing a combination of research methods that triangulate findings and provide a comprehensive understanding of public perception. Specifically, employing surveys to gather quantitative data on broad public opinion, focus groups to explore the nuances and underlying reasons for those opinions, and content analysis to assess the existing media landscape and public discourse offers a robust foundation for strategic planning. This multi-method approach aligns with best practices by providing both breadth and depth of understanding, allowing for informed decision-making that is grounded in evidence. The ethical justification stems from the commitment to accuracy, transparency, and accountability in public relations practice, ensuring that strategies are based on genuine understanding rather than assumption. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on a single research method without considering its limitations. For instance, using only surveys might provide a snapshot of opinions but fail to uncover the why behind those opinions, leading to superficial understanding. This could result in strategies that address symptoms rather than root causes. Relying exclusively on focus groups while offering depth might not be representative of the broader public, leading to conclusions based on a potentially unrepresentative sample. Content analysis alone, without understanding public sentiment, might reveal what is being said, but not how it is being received or what the public truly thinks. Each of these singular approaches risks misrepresenting the situation, leading to flawed strategies that are not ethically sound as they do not accurately reflect the public's views or the communication environment. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes understanding the research objectives first. What specific questions need answering? What level of detail is required? What is the target audience for the research findings? Once objectives are clear, evaluate which research methods are best suited to meet those objectives, considering their strengths, weaknesses, costs, and timelines. A critical step is to consider how different methods can complement each other to provide a more complete picture. Finally, ensure that the interpretation of findings is objective and directly linked back to the initial objectives, avoiding confirmation bias. Question 7. Assessment of a public relations team's approach to developing a strategic plan for a new product launch, considering the following options for defining success. A. Establishing specific, measurable objectives for media coverage, stakeholder engagement, and message dissemination, with clear strategies and tactics to achieve them, and a plan for evaluating outcomes against these objectives. B. Focusing on maximizing the number of media mentions and social media shares, regardless of the sentiment or accuracy of the coverage. C. Prioritizing the creation of viral content and generating widespread buzz, even if it means employing provocative or attention-grabbing tactics that might be ethically ambiguous. D. Aiming for a general increase in positive sentiment and brand awareness without defining specific targets or methods for measurement. Option A. Focusing on maximizing the number of media mentions and social media shares, regardless of the sentiment or accuracy of the coverage. Option B. Prioritizing the creation of viral content and generating widespread buzz, even if it means employing provocative or attention-grabbing tactics that might be ethically ambiguous. Option C. Aiming for a general increase in positive sentiment and brand awareness without defining specific targets or methods for measurement. Option D. Establishing specific, measurable objectives for media coverage, stakeholder engagement, and message dissemination, with clear strategies and tactics to achieve them, and a plan for evaluating outcomes against these objectives. The correct answer is D. Establishing specific, measurable objectives for media coverage, stakeholder engagement, and message dissemination, with clear strategies and tactics to achieve them, and a plan for evaluating outcomes against these objectives. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, balancing the need for measurable results with the inherent complexities of public perception and media engagement. The professional challenge lies in translating broad organizational goals into specific, actionable, and ethically sound public relations objectives, strategies, and tactics that can be evaluated. It requires a deep understanding of the organization's mission, its stakeholders, and the communication landscape, while adhering to professional codes of conduct and any relevant regulatory guidelines. Careful judgment is needed to ensure that planned activities are not only effective, but also responsible and transparent. The correct approach involves developing a plan that clearly articulates SMART, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, time-bound objectives. These objectives should directly support the overarching goals. Strategies should then outline the broad methods to achieve these objectives, and tactics should detail the specific actions to be taken. This structured approach ensures that the public relations efforts are aligned with organizational aims and can be evaluated for their impact. Ethically, this ensures accountability and transparency in communication efforts, demonstrating a commitment to achieving defined outcomes responsibly. An approach that focuses solely on media mentions without linking them to specific communication objectives or organizational goals is ethically flawed. It prioritizes quantity over quality and impact, potentially leading to superficial engagement that does not contribute to strategic outcomes. This can also lead to the dissemination of information that is not carefully considered or vetted, risking reputational damage. An approach that prioritizes generating buzz or controversy for its own sake, without a clear strategic purpose or consideration of potential negative consequences, is irresponsible. This can lead to ethical breaches by creating misleading narratives or engaging in manipulative communication practices, failing to uphold the principles of honesty and integrity in public relations. An approach that neglects to define measurable objectives and instead relies on vague aspirations for improved public perception lacks accountability. Without clear metrics, it is impossible to assess the effectiveness of the PR plan or demonstrate its value to the organization. This can lead to wasted resources and a failure to achieve meaningful results, undermining professional credibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough needs assessment, followed by the articulation of clear, measurable objectives that align with organizational goals. Strategies should be developed to address these objectives, and tactics should be chosen for their appropriateness and ethical implications. Continuous evaluation and adaptation are crucial to ensure the plan remains effective and aligned with ethical standards and regulatory requirements. Question 8. Which approach would be most ethically sound and strategically effective for communicating a significant, but not yet fully confirmed, environmental impact report to various stakeholder groups, including local residents, environmental activists, investors, and regulatory bodies? Option A. Create distinct communication plans for each stakeholder group, using accessible language and addressing their specific concerns, while clearly stating the preliminary nature of the findings and the ongoing investigation. Option B. Focus communication efforts primarily on regulatory bodies and investors, providing them with detailed information while issuing a brief, reassuring statement to local residents and activists. Option C. Develop a single, comprehensive press release that outlines the preliminary findings in technical terms, suitable for all audiences. Option D. Delay all public communication until the report is fully confirmed and all potential impacts are definitively understood, to avoid causing unnecessary alarm. The correct answer is C. Develop a single, comprehensive press release that outlines the preliminary findings in technical terms, suitable for all audiences. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the organization's need to communicate potentially sensitive information with the ethical obligation to be transparent and truthful with diverse stakeholder groups. Public relations professionals must navigate differing levels of understanding, potential biases, and varying interests among these groups, ensuring that communication is not only effective, but also builds trust and maintains the organization's reputation. The challenge lies in tailoring messages without distorting facts or creating undue alarm, while adhering to professional codes of conduct. The correct approach involves developing tailored communication strategies for each stakeholder group, acknowledging their specific concerns, and providing information in a format and language they can understand. This demonstrates respect for each group and fosters a more productive dialogue. Ethically, this aligns with principles of transparency, honesty, and fairness, as outlined in professional public relations codes of conduct, which emphasize the importance of truthful and accurate communication with all publics. It also reflects a strategic understanding of stakeholder engagement, recognizing that a one-size-fits-all approach is rarely effective or ethical. An approach that prioritizes a single, generic message for all stakeholders would fail to acknowledge the unique needs and perspectives of different groups, potentially leading to misunderstanding, distrust, and alienation. This is ethically problematic as it lacks consideration for the diverse audiences and can be perceived as dismissive or manipulative. Another incorrect approach would be to withhold information from certain groups deemed less influential or more likely to react negatively. This is a direct violation of ethical principles of transparency and honesty. Such a strategy erodes trust and can lead to significant reputational damage if the withheld information eventually comes to light. It also fails to recognize the interconnectedness of stakeholder relationships. Finally, an approach that uses overly technical jargon or complex language when communicating with non-expert stakeholders would be ethically flawed. While not intentionally deceptive, it creates a barrier to understanding and can be perceived as an attempt to obscure or downplay important information. Effective public relations requires clear, accessible communication that empowers stakeholders to make informed judgments. Professionals should approach such situations by first identifying all relevant stakeholder groups and understanding their interests, concerns, and preferred communication channels. Then, they should develop clear, accurate, and tailored messages for each group, ensuring consistency in core facts while adapting the delivery. Regular evaluation of communication effectiveness and a willingness to adapt strategies based on feedback are also crucial components of ethical and effective stakeholder engagement. Question 9. Implementation of a new corporate social responsibility initiative by Green Tech Solutions involved issuing a press release detailing their commitment to reducing carbon emissions, followed by a paid social media campaign showcasing the environmental benefits of their products, and a series of interviews with their CEO on business news channels discussing the company's long-term sustainability vision. Which of the following best distinguishes the public relations component of this initiative from related fields? Option A. The CEO interviews on business news channels are the sole public relations element, as they represent direct media engagement and information dissemination. Option B. The paid social media campaign showcasing the environmental benefits of their products is the primary public relations activity, as it directly promotes the company's offerings to a broad audience. Option C. The entire initiative, including the press release, social media campaign, and CEO interviews, should be classified as advertising because it aims to influence public perception and drive consumer interest. Option D. The press release announcing the CSR initiative and the CEO interviews discussing the company's sustainability vision are the public relations components, focusing on building goodwill and managing reputation through earned media and strategic communication. The correct answer is D. The press release announcing the CSR initiative and the CEO interviews discussing the company's sustainability vision are the public relations components, focusing on building goodwill and managing reputation through earned media and strategic communication. Explanation. This scenario presents a common professional challenge where the lines between public relations, marketing, advertising, and journalism can become blurred, especially in the digital age. The challenge lies in accurately identifying the primary purpose and intended audience of communication to ensure it aligns with the ethical and regulatory standards of public relations. Mischaracterizing an activity can lead to misallocation of resources, ineffective communication strategies, and potential breaches of professional conduct or regulatory guidelines. Careful judgment is required to discern the core intent behind a communication initiative. The correct approach involves recognizing that the primary objective of the initiative is to build and maintain mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its publics through understanding and goodwill. This is achieved by managing information flow, fostering dialogue, and proactively addressing public perception. This aligns with the core principles of public relations, which emphasize ethical communication, transparency, and long-term relationship building, as outlined in professional codes of conduct and general principles of responsible corporate communication. An approach that focuses solely on direct sales or promotional messaging, without a clear emphasis on relationship building or public understanding, fails to distinguish public relations from marketing or advertising. Marketing's primary goal is to facilitate the exchange of goods or services, while advertising is a paid form of promotion. Misclassifying such activities as public relations would misrepresent the organization's communication efforts and potentially violate ethical standards by implying a public interest motive where a commercial one predominates. An approach that prioritizes the dissemination of factual information without considering the strategic management of an organization's reputation or the cultivation of public opinion overlooks the relational and strategic aspects of public relations. While journalism focuses on reporting news, public relations aims to shape perceptions and build relationships through strategic communication, which may involve providing information, but is not limited to it. Treating public relations as mere news dissemination would ignore its broader mandate of managing organizational image and stakeholder relationships. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear assessment of the primary objective of the communication. Ask, is the main goal to sell a product/service, marketing/advertising, to report news objectively journalism, or to build and maintain relationships and understanding with various publics through two-way communication and reputation management, public relations? Consider the intended audience and the nature of the message. If the focus is on paid promotion, direct sales, or objective news reporting, it is likely not public relations. If it involves strategic communication to foster goodwill, manage reputation, and engage stakeholders, it aligns with public relations principles. Question 10. Risk assessment procedures indicate that a client, a rapidly growing tech startup, is planning to announce a new product launch with claims of revolutionary capabilities that may be exaggerated and lack independent verification. As the public relations consultant, you are tasked with developing the communication strategy. Which of the following approaches best embodies the principles of ethical and effective public relations practice in this situation? Option A. Proceed with the client's initial messaging, focusing on generating buzz and media attention, and address any factual discrepancies if they arise after the launch. Option B. Immediately request detailed technical specifications, independent testing results, and evidence to support all claims before proceeding with any communication strategy, and advise the client on how to present factual information accurately and transparently. Option C. Advise the client to present the product's features and benefits as strongly as possible, focusing on the aspirational aspects of the technology, and to defer detailed technical explanations to a later stage. Option D. Draft press releases and social media posts that highlight the most impressive-sounding features, using persuasive language to generate excitement, and assume that the media and public will understand the aspirational nature of the claims. The correct answer is C. Advise the client to present the product's features and benefits as strongly as possible, focusing on the aspirational aspects of the technology, and to defer detailed technical explanations to a later stage. Explanation. This scenario presents a common professional challenge in public relations, balancing the client's desire for positive publicity with the ethical obligation to provide accurate and transparent information to the public and stakeholders. The challenge lies in navigating potential conflicts of interest and ensuring that communication practices adhere to established ethical codes and regulatory expectations, particularly concerning misleading information. The correct approach involves proactively identifying potential factual inaccuracies in the client's claims and advising them on how to present information truthfully and responsibly. This aligns with the core principles of ethical public relations, which emphasize honesty, accuracy, and transparency. Specifically, it upholds the professional duty to avoid deceptive practices and to act in the public interest by ensuring that information disseminated is factual and verifiable. This approach prioritizes building long-term trust and credibility, which are essential for effective public relations, and avoids potential regulatory scrutiny or reputational damage that could arise from disseminating false or misleading information. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on fulfilling the client's request without verifying the information risks violating ethical codes that prohibit the dissemination of false or misleading statements. This could lead to a breach of trust with the public and media, and potentially contravene regulations designed to protect consumers and investors from deceptive practices. Another incorrect approach, which involves selectively presenting information to create a favorable impression while omitting crucial context, is also ethically problematic. This practice, often referred to as spin, can be considered deceptive if it leads stakeholders to form an inaccurate understanding of the situation. It undermines the principle of transparency and can erode credibility. A further incorrect approach, which involves ignoring the potential for misinterpretation and proceeding with the client's narrative without critical evaluation, fails to exercise professional due diligence. Ethical public relations practice requires a proactive stance in anticipating how information might be perceived and ensuring it is presented in a manner that is both accurate and understandable, thereby preventing unintended deception. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the client's objectives. This should be followed by a rigorous fact-checking process of all claims intended for public dissemination. If inaccuracies or misleading elements are identified, the professional must ethically advise the client on corrective actions, prioritizing truthfulness and transparency. This involves open communication with the client about potential risks and ethical obligations, and being prepared to decline participation if the client insists on unethical or deceptive practices. The ultimate goal is to foster informed public discourse and maintain the integrity of the public relations profession. Question 11. During the evaluation of a new product launch for a technology firm, which research and analysis approach would best ensure the development of a robust and ethically sound public relations strategy? Option A. Prioritizing the immediate development and dissemination of press releases and social media content to generate buzz, deferring in-depth analysis until after the launch. Option B. Focusing primarily on gathering positive media mentions and testimonials related to the company's existing products to build a narrative of success for the new launch. Option C. Conducting a comprehensive situational analysis to understand the market landscape and competitive environment, performing a thorough SWOT analysis to identify internal strengths and weaknesses alongside external opportunities and threats, and undertaking a detailed audience analysis to segment key publics and understand their communication preferences and perceptions. Option D. Relying on broad demographic data for potential customers without investigating their specific needs, concerns, or preferred communication channels. The correct answer is C. Conducting a comprehensive situational analysis to understand the market landscape and competitive environment, performing a thorough SWOT analysis to identify internal strengths and weaknesses alongside external opportunities and threats, and undertaking a detailed audience analysis to segment key publics and understand their communication preferences and perceptions. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations practitioner to move beyond superficial data collection and engage in a rigorous, evidence-based analysis to inform strategic decision-making. The core challenge lies in ensuring that the research conducted is not only comprehensive, but also directly relevant to the organization's objectives and the specific situation at hand. Failure to conduct thorough research can lead to misinformed strategies, wasted resources, and ultimately, ineffective public relations campaigns that do not achieve desired outcomes or, worse, damage the organization's reputation. Careful judgment is required to select the most appropriate research methodologies and analytical frameworks that will yield actionable insights. The correct approach involves a systematic and integrated process of situational analysis, SWOT analysis, and audience analysis, all grounded in verifiable data and aligned with the organization's strategic goals. This approach ensures that the public relations strategy is built on a solid understanding of the internal and external environment, the organization's strengths and weaknesses, its opportunities and threats, and the specific characteristics and needs of its target audiences. This aligns with the ethical principles of professional public relations, which emphasize honesty, accuracy, and responsibility. By thoroughly analyzing the situation, the practitioner can identify key issues, potential challenges, and opportunities for engagement, thereby developing a strategy that is both effective and ethically sound. This comprehensive understanding is crucial for fulfilling the duty of care owed to the client or employer and for maintaining public trust. An approach that focuses solely on identifying readily available positive information about the organization, while neglecting to critically assess weaknesses or potential threats, represents a significant ethical failure. This selective research can lead to an overly optimistic and unrealistic assessment, resulting in strategies that are ill-equipped to handle challenges or capitalize on genuine opportunities. It violates the principle of accuracy and can mislead stakeholders. Another incorrect approach is to conduct a superficial audience analysis that relies on broad demographic data without delving into psychographics, communication preferences, or existing perceptions. This lack of depth means the practitioner may not truly understand the motivations, concerns, or media consumption habits of the target audience, leading to messaging that is irrelevant or ineffective. This failure to understand the audience can result in communication that is not only ignored but also potentially alienating, thereby undermining the public relations effort and potentially damaging the organization's relationship with key publics. Furthermore, an approach that prioritizes speed and immediate campaign launch over thorough research and analysis is professionally unsound. While timeliness can be important, rushing into a campaign without a robust understanding of the situation, SWOT, and audience is a recipe for failure. This haste can lead to overlooking critical factors, making assumptions that are not supported by evidence, and ultimately developing a strategy that is misdirected and ineffective. This demonstrates a lack of diligence and professional responsibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the objectives, Clearly understand what the public relations initiative aims to achieve. 2. Conduct comprehensive research. Employ a mix of qualitative and quantitative research methods to gather data on the situation, internal capabilities, external environment, and target audiences. This includes situational analysis to understand the context, SWOT analysis to assess internal and external factors, and detailed audience analysis to understand their characteristics and perceptions. 3. Synthesize findings. Analyze the gathered data to identify key insights, trends, and relationships. 4. Develop strategic recommendations. Based on the synthesized findings, formulate clear, actionable, and ethically sound public relations strategies and tactics. 5. Implement and evaluate. Execute the strategy and continuously monitor its effectiveness, making adjustments as needed. Question 12. The control framework reveals that a public relations consultancy is advising a client on a new development project. The consultancy has identified several groups who will be directly impacted by the project. Which of the following approaches to stakeholder identification and management best aligns with the regulatory framework and ethical guidelines for public relations professionals in the UK? Option A. Focus communication efforts primarily on regulatory bodies and key media outlets, assuming that their engagement will indirectly address the concerns of other affected stakeholders. Option B. Rely on existing, long-standing relationships with a select few influential community leaders to represent the interests of all broader stakeholder groups. Option C. Conduct a thorough stakeholder mapping exercise to identify all potentially affected parties, categorize them by their level of interest and influence, and develop tailored communication plans that acknowledge and address their diverse concerns and perspectives. Option D. Prioritize engagement with stakeholders who have expressed strong support for the project and those with significant financial investment, while deferring communication with groups that have voiced opposition until later stages. The correct answer is D. Prioritize engagement with stakeholders who have expressed strong support for the project and those with significant financial investment, while deferring communication with groups that have voiced opposition until later stages. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the strategic communication needs of an organization with the ethical and regulatory obligations to various stakeholders. The public relations industry, particularly in the UK, is governed by frameworks that emphasize transparency, accuracy, and fairness in communication. Mismanaging stakeholder identification and engagement can lead to reputational damage, loss of trust, and potential breaches of professional codes of conduct, such as those outlined by the Chartered Institute of Public Relations, CIPR Code of Conduct. The correct approach involves a systematic and inclusive process of identifying all relevant stakeholders, understanding their interests and influence, and developing tailored communication strategies. This aligns with the CIPR Code of Conduct's emphasis on acting with integrity, being accountable, and communicating truthfully. By proactively engaging with all identified stakeholders, including those with potentially dissenting views, a PR professional demonstrates a commitment to ethical practice and builds stronger, more resilient relationships. This approach fosters trust and ensures that communication efforts are both effective and responsible, adhering to the spirit and letter of professional guidelines. An approach that prioritizes only easily accessible or overtly supportive stakeholders is ethically flawed because it neglects the legitimate interests of other groups. This can lead to accusations of bias, exclusion, and a failure to represent the full spectrum of public opinion. Such an oversight could violate the CIPR Code's principles of fairness and accuracy, as it presents an incomplete or skewed picture. Focusing solely on stakeholders with immediate financial or political influence, while ignoring those with less overt power but significant ethical claims, represents a failure to uphold the broader social responsibility expected of PR professionals. Selective engagement can be seen as manipulative and can undermine public trust in the profession. It fails to acknowledge the diverse voices that contribute to the public discourse and can lead to decisions that are not in the wider public interest, contravening ethical obligations to consider societal impact. Furthermore, an approach that relies on outdated stakeholder lists without periodic review is negligent. The stakeholder landscape is dynamic, and failing to update these lists means that emerging concerns or new influential groups may be overlooked. This can result in missed opportunities for constructive dialogue and a failure to address potential issues before they escalate, demonstrating a lack of diligence and foresight. Professionals should adopt a decision-making process that begins with a comprehensive stakeholder mapping exercise. This involves brainstorming all potential groups affected by or able to affect the organization, categorizing them by interest and influence, and then prioritizing engagement based on ethical considerations and strategic importance. Regular review and adaptation of this mapping are crucial. Communication strategies should then be developed collaboratively, ensuring that diverse perspectives are considered and addressed respectfully, in line with professional codes and legal requirements. Question 13. Performance analysis shows that our organization's media coverage has become increasingly negative and superficial, with journalists often focusing on sensational aspects rather than our core initiatives. To address this, which of the following strategies is most likely to foster genuine, long-term positive relationships with the media and improve the quality of our coverage? Option A. Offer financial incentives or exclusive perks to journalists and media outlets in exchange for favorable reporting on our organization's activities. Option B. Proactively engage with key journalists and influencers by providing them with exclusive, accurate, and timely information, offering background briefings, and being consistently available for comment, thereby building a foundation of trust and mutual respect. Option C. Limit media access and only provide information when absolutely necessary, focusing on controlling the narrative through carefully curated statements. Option D. Prioritize spending resources on crisis communication and damage control measures to address negative press as it arises, rather than investing in ongoing media engagement. Correct answer is B. Proactively engage with key journalists and influencers by providing them with exclusive, accurate, and timely information, offering background briefings, and being consistently available for comment, thereby building a foundation of trust and mutual respect. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, balancing the immediate need for positive media coverage with the long-term imperative of maintaining genuine stakeholder relationships. The professional challenge lies in recognizing that short-term gains achieved through superficial engagement can erode trust and credibility, ultimately undermining the organization's reputation. Careful judgment is required to prioritize authentic communication and relationship building over transactional interactions. The correct approach involves proactively engaging with journalists and influencers, providing them with accurate and timely information, and fostering open dialogue. This builds a foundation of trust and mutual respect, making them more likely to report favorably and accurately on the organization in the future. This aligns with the ethical principles of transparency and honesty, which are fundamental to building and maintaining strong relationships in public relations. While specific UK regulations for public relations are not codified in a single statute, the industry adheres to professional codes of conduct, such as those set by the Chartered Institute of Public Relations (CIPR) and the Public Relations and Communications Association (PRCA). These codes emphasize integrity, accuracy, and responsible communication, all of which support the chosen approach. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on providing incentives for positive coverage is ethically problematic and potentially breaches professional codes. Such an approach can be perceived as bribery or undue influence, compromising the integrity of journalistic reporting and damaging the organization's reputation if exposed. It undermines the principle of independent journalism and can lead to a loss of credibility with both the media and the public. Another incorrect approach that involves withholding information or engaging in selective disclosure is also detrimental. This practice erodes trust and can lead to accusations of deception or a lack of transparency. When stakeholders, including journalists, feel they are not receiving the full picture, they are more likely to become suspicious and investigate further, potentially uncovering negative information that the organization attempted to conceal. This directly contravenes the ethical obligation to be truthful and open. A further incorrect approach that prioritizes reactive damage control over proactive relationship building misses the fundamental purpose of public relations. While crisis management is important, a consistent focus on building strong relationships during normal times provides a buffer of goodwill and understanding when challenges arise. Neglecting relationship building means that, when a crisis hits, the organization has no established trust or positive rapport to draw upon, making recovery significantly more difficult. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a strategic assessment of stakeholder needs and organizational objectives. It requires prioritizing ethical conduct and long-term relationship building over short-term expediency. Professionals should ask themselves, does this action build trust and credibility? And does this align with our commitment to transparency and accuracy? By consistently applying these ethical filters, public relations practitioners can navigate complex situations and foster enduring, positive relationships. Question 14. Operational review demonstrates that a proposed public relations campaign for a new product launch is expected to generate significant media attention and positive public sentiment. However, preliminary internal discussions suggest that the manufacturing process for this product has some environmental concerns that have not yet been fully addressed. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible public relations and regulatory compliance? Option A. Prioritize the immediate positive publicity and launch the campaign, assuming that any environmental concerns will be minor and can be managed through reactive public relations if they arise. Option B. Conduct a thorough and objective impact assessment of the entire campaign, including potential environmental and social consequences, and develop communication strategies that are transparent and address all material issues before launch. Option C. Focus the campaign solely on the product's features and benefits, and instruct the communications team to avoid any mention or implication of the manufacturing process or its environmental footprint. Option D. Proceed with the campaign as planned, focusing on the positive aspects of the product and deferring any discussion of environmental concerns until they are fully resolved. Correct answer is D. Proceed with the campaign as planned, focusing on the positive aspects of the product and deferring any discussion of environmental concerns until they are fully resolved. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the immediate need for positive publicity with the long-term ethical and regulatory obligations of public relations practice. The pressure to deliver favorable outcomes quickly can lead to shortcuts that compromise integrity and compliance. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all communication is truthful, accurate, and adheres to the principles of responsible public relations, particularly concerning the impact of campaigns on stakeholders and the environment. The correct approach involves conducting a thorough and objective impact assessment before launching any public relations campaign. This means systematically evaluating the potential positive and negative consequences of the campaign on various stakeholders, including the public, employees, investors, and the environment. It requires gathering data, analyzing potential risks and benefits, and considering alternative strategies that minimize harm and maximize positive societal contribution. This approach is ethically justified by the PRCA, Public Relations and Communications Association, Code of Conduct, which emphasizes honesty, accuracy, and the avoidance of misleading information. It also aligns with the principle of acting in the public interest, ensuring that public relations activities contribute positively to society rather than merely serving narrow commercial interests. An incorrect approach would be to proceed with the campaign based solely on anecdotal evidence or the perceived enthusiasm of a few key individuals. This fails to meet the ethical obligation of accuracy and thoroughness, as it bypasses the necessary due diligence to understand the true impact. It risks misrepresenting the campaign's effects and could lead to unintended negative consequences that damage the organization's reputation and public trust. Another incorrect approach would be to focus exclusively on the potential positive outcomes while deliberately ignoring or downplaying any potential negative impacts. This is ethically unsound, as it violates the principle of transparency and honesty. It can lead to a situation where stakeholders are misled about the true nature and consequences of the campaign, potentially causing harm and eroding credibility. Finally, an incorrect approach would be to outsource the impact assessment to an external agency without establishing clear ethical guidelines or oversight. While external expertise can be valuable, the ultimate responsibility for ethical conduct and regulatory compliance rests with the organization. Without proper oversight, the assessment might be superficial, biased, or fail to adequately consider all relevant ethical and regulatory dimensions. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured approach. 1. Define the campaign objectives clearly. 2. Identify all relevant stakeholders. 3. Conduct a comprehensive impact assessment, considering both positive and negative consequences across social, environmental, and reputational dimensions. 4. Consult relevant professional codes of conduct and regulatory guidelines. 5. Develop communication strategies that are truthful, accurate, and transparent. 6. Establish mechanisms for ongoing monitoring and evaluation of the campaign's impact. 7. Be prepared to adapt or halt the campaign if significant negative impacts are identified. Question 15. Compliance review shows that an organization's social media team has been instructed to manage all public inquiries and feedback received through their official social media channels. Which of the following approaches best aligns with professional public relations principles and regulatory expectations for managing social media communication? Option A. Proactively monitor social media for mentions of the organization. Respond to inquiries and comments promptly and accurately, and escalate complex or sensitive issues to the appropriate internal stakeholders for a coordinated and informed response. Option B. Respond to all social media comments immediately without verifying information or consulting relevant departments to ensure rapid engagement. Option C. Delete all negative comments and posts that are critical of the organization to maintain a positive online image. Option D. Ignore any negative comments or inquiries on social media to avoid drawing further attention to potential issues. The correct answer is A. Proactively monitor social media for mentions of the organization, respond to inquiries and comments promptly and accurately, and escalate complex or sensitive issues to the appropriate internal stakeholders for a coordinated and informed response. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the speed and reach of social media with the need for accuracy, transparency, and adherence to professional ethical standards in public relations. The rapid dissemination of information on social media platforms means that a misstep can have immediate and widespread negative consequences. Careful judgment is required to ensure that all communications are not only effective, but also compliant with relevant professional codes and ethical principles. The correct approach involves proactively monitoring social media for mentions of the organization, responding to inquiries and comments promptly and accurately, and escalating complex or sensitive issues to the appropriate internal stakeholders for a coordinated and informed response. This approach ensures that the organization maintains control over its narrative, addresses concerns in a timely manner, and upholds its commitment to transparency and accuracy. This aligns with the ethical principles of public relations, which emphasize truthfulness, accuracy, and responsible communication. Specifically, professional bodies often mandate that practitioners act with integrity and avoid disseminating false or misleading information, which this approach directly supports by prioritizing accuracy and informed responses. An incorrect approach that involves ignoring negative comments or inquiries on social media is professionally unacceptable. This failure to engage can be perceived as dismissiveness or a lack of accountability, damaging the organization's reputation and trust. Ethically, it breaches the principle of open communication and responsiveness expected of public relations professionals. Another incorrect approach, which is to respond to all social media comments immediately without verifying information or consulting relevant departments, is also professionally unacceptable. This can lead to the dissemination of inaccurate or incomplete information, potentially causing significant reputational damage and violating ethical obligations to be truthful and accurate. It bypasses necessary internal checks and balances that ensure communications are aligned with organizational policy and factual correctness. A third incorrect approach, which is to delete all negative comments without addressing the underlying issues, is professionally unacceptable. This practice is often seen as censorship and can exacerbate public distrust. It fails to acknowledge legitimate concerns and can lead to accusations of dishonesty or a lack of transparency, directly contravening ethical duties to engage constructively and address stakeholder feedback. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes a thorough understanding of the situation before responding. This involves active listening, monitoring social media, fact-checking, consulting internal experts or policies, and crafting responses that are truthful, accurate, and aligned with organizational values and ethical standards. When in doubt, it is always better to pause, gather information, and consult with appropriate parties rather than to react impulsively. Question 16. Quality control measures reveal that a public relations team is preparing a keynote speech for a major industry conference to launch a new product. The draft speech includes several bold claims about the product's unique benefits and market impact, designed to generate excitement and secure media attention. However, a review indicates that some of these claims are based on preliminary data that has not yet been fully validated, and that certain potential limitations of the product are not explicitly mentioned. The team is under pressure to deliver a high-impact presentation that will resonate strongly with the audience and differentiate the company from competitors. Which of the following approaches best adheres to the principles of responsible public relations and regulatory compliance in this scenario? Option A. Revise the speech to ensure all claims are factually substantiated with validated data, and to include a balanced discussion of the product's benefits and any relevant limitations, even if this moderates the immediate sensational impact. Option B. Proceed with the speech as drafted, focusing on the most compelling, albeit unvalidated, claims to maximize audience engagement and media coverage, with the understanding that full validation will occur post-launch. Option C. Remove all specific claims and limitations from the speech, opting for a vague and general overview of the product's innovative nature to avoid any potential for misrepresentation, even if it significantly reduces the speech's impact. Option D. Modify the speech to emphasize emotional appeals and aspirational language related to the product's potential, downplaying specific factual assertions and any mention of limitations to create a more persuasive narrative. The correct answer is A. Revise the speech to ensure all claims are factually substantiated with validated data and to include a balanced discussion of the product's benefits and any relevant limitations, even if this moderates the immediate sensational impact. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the strategic objectives of a public relations campaign with the ethical and regulatory obligations of accurate and transparent communication. The challenge lies in ensuring that a speech, intended to engage an audience and promote a specific initiative, does not inadvertently mislead or misrepresent information, which could have legal and reputational consequences. Careful judgment is required to navigate the fine line between persuasive communication and factual integrity. The correct approach involves developing a speech that is not only engaging and well-structured, but also grounded in verifiable facts and presented with appropriate context. This ensures that the audience receives accurate information, fostering trust and credibility. From a regulatory and ethical standpoint, this aligns with principles of honesty and transparency, which are fundamental to responsible public relations practice. Adhering to these principles helps prevent misrepresentation, which could violate advertising standards or consumer protection laws, depending on the specific jurisdiction's regulations governing public communications. An incorrect approach that prioritizes sensationalism over accuracy would fail to uphold ethical standards. This could lead to the dissemination of misleading information, potentially breaching regulations that prohibit deceptive advertising or require factual substantiation of claims. Such an approach risks damaging the organization's reputation and could incur penalties if it contravenes specific legal requirements for public statements. Another incorrect approach that focuses solely on audience emotional appeal without regard for factual basis is also professionally unacceptable. While emotional connection is important for engagement, it must be built upon a foundation of truth. Relying on unsubstantiated claims or emotional manipulation can be seen as deceptive and may violate ethical codes of conduct for public relations professionals, as well as potentially falling foul of regulations concerning misleading statements. A further incorrect approach that omits crucial context or caveats, even if the core statements are technically true, can also be problematic. This selective presentation of information can create a misleading impression, undermining the principle of transparency. Public relations professionals have a duty to provide a balanced and complete picture, and omitting vital context can be as damaging as outright falsehoods, potentially leading to accusations of misrepresentation and a loss of public trust. A professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough review of all factual assertions intended for inclusion in the speech. This includes verifying data, substantiating claims with evidence, and considering potential interpretations by the audience. A risk assessment should be conducted to identify any statements that could be misconstrued or lead to unintended negative consequences. Collaboration with legal counsel or subject matter experts can be invaluable in ensuring compliance and ethical integrity. The ultimate goal is to craft a message that is both persuasive and truthful, serving the organization's objectives while upholding the highest standards of professional conduct. Question 17. The assessment process reveals that a technology company is facing public scrutiny over the environmental impact of its manufacturing processes. The public relations team is considering different approaches to manage this situation and rebuild public trust. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of ethical public relations and regulatory expectations for responsible communication in the UK? Option A. Implementing a strategy that prioritizes generating positive media coverage through carefully crafted press releases and influencer collaborations, focusing on highlighting the company's existing sustainability initiatives without significant operational changes. Option B. Engaging in open dialogue with environmental groups and the public, actively seeking feedback on concerns, and demonstrating a willingness to adapt manufacturing processes and invest in more sustainable technologies based on this input, while transparently communicating both challenges and progress. Option C. Focusing solely on internal communications to assure employees of the company's commitment to sustainability, while issuing generic statements to the public that downplay the severity of the environmental impact. Option D. Developing a communication plan that involves extensive research into public concerns, followed by a targeted campaign to persuade the public that the company's current practices are acceptable, with minimal concessions or changes to operations. The correct answer is A. Implementing a strategy that prioritizes generating positive media coverage through carefully crafted press releases and influencer collaborations, focusing on highlighting the company's existing sustainability initiatives without significant operational changes. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a public relations practitioner to navigate the ethical and practical implications of different communication models in a real-world context, where the organization's reputation and public trust are at stake. The practitioner must exercise careful judgment to select the model that best aligns with ethical principles and regulatory expectations for transparent and responsible communication. The correct approach involves adopting the two-way symmetrical model. This model emphasizes mutual understanding and two-way communication, where the organization seeks to understand its publics and adjusts its behavior based on that understanding, while also communicating its own perspective. This aligns with the principles of ethical public relations, which advocate for honesty, accuracy, and fairness in communication. Specifically, in the UK context, this approach resonates with the Public Relations and Communications Association, PRCA, professional charter, which promotes integrity, transparency, and accountability. By engaging in genuine dialogue and being willing to adapt, the organization demonstrates a commitment to building long-term, trust-based relationships, which is a cornerstone of responsible public relations practice and fosters a positive public perception that is less susceptible to regulatory scrutiny. An incorrect approach would be to solely employ the press agentry model. This model focuses on generating publicity and attention, often through exaggeration or distortion, without regard for accuracy or the public's right to know. This fails to meet the ethical standards of transparency and honesty expected in public relations and could lead to accusations of misleading the public, potentially violating advertising standards or consumer protection regulations if the information disseminated is false or deceptive. Another incorrect approach is to use the one-way asymmetrical model. While this model involves research to understand the public, its primary goal is to persuade the public to accept the organization's point of view, with little emphasis on changing organizational behavior. This can be seen as manipulative and fails to foster genuine understanding or build trust. Ethically, it falls short of the PRCA commitment to truthful and accurate representation, and could be viewed as a failure to engage in fair and balanced communication, potentially leading to reputational damage if the public perceives the organization as disingenuous. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the organization's objectives, the nature of the issue, and the expectations of its publics. Practitioners should prioritize ethical considerations and regulatory compliance, selecting the communication model that promotes transparency, accuracy, and mutual understanding. This involves a commitment to building long-term relationships based on trust, rather than short-term gains achieved through potentially misleading tactics. Question 18. Benchmark analysis indicates that a recent public relations campaign aimed at increasing brand awareness among a target demographic has concluded. The campaign involved a mix of media relations, social media engagement, and influencer collaborations. To evaluate its effectiveness, which of the following approaches would best demonstrate the campaign's impact and provide actionable insights for future strategies, while adhering to professional ethical standards? Option A. Focusing on the number of positive comments received on social media and highlighting testimonials from a few key influencers, while omitting any data on media coverage or survey results. Option B. Measuring the change in brand awareness through pre- and post-campaign surveys, correlating these shifts with specific campaign activities, and analyzing the sentiment of media coverage and social media conversations. Option C. Analyzing the volume of media mentions and social media impressions generated, alongside qualitative feedback from influencers about their engagement with the campaign content. Option D. Reporting the number of press releases distributed and the reach of social media posts, supplemented by anecdotal feedback from the internal marketing team about perceived campaign success. The correct answer is C. Analyzing the volume of media mentions and social media impressions generated, alongside qualitative feedback from influencers about their engagement with the campaign content. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires a public relations practitioner to move beyond simply reporting raw data to providing meaningful insights that demonstrate the value of their campaign. The challenge lies in translating campaign activities into measurable outcomes that align with organizational objectives, while adhering to ethical reporting standards and the specific regulatory framework of the Certificate in Principles of Public Relations exam. Careful judgment is required to select appropriate metrics and analytical methods that are both robust and ethically defensible, avoiding misrepresentation or overstatement of results. The correct approach involves a comprehensive evaluation that links campaign activities to specific, measurable objectives and analyzes the impact on key performance indicators, KPI, relevant to the organization's goals. This approach is right because it demonstrates accountability and strategic thinking, providing stakeholders with a clear understanding of the campaign's return on investment (ROI) and its contribution to broader business objectives. Ethically, it aligns with principles of transparency and accuracy in reporting, ensuring that conclusions are supported by evidence and that the limitations of the measurement are acknowledged. This aligns with the professional standards expected in public relations, where demonstrable impact is crucial for continued investment and strategic planning. An approach that focuses solely on output metrics, such as the number of press releases issued or social media posts published, is incorrect. This fails to demonstrate campaign effectiveness because it measures activity rather than impact. It is ethically problematic as it can create a false impression of success by highlighting effort without evidence of results, potentially misleading stakeholders about the campaign's true value. An approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or subjective testimonials without quantitative data is also incorrect. While qualitative insights can be valuable, they are insufficient on their own to rigorously evaluate campaign effectiveness. Relying solely on such evidence lacks objectivity and can be perceived as biased, failing to meet the professional standard of evidence-based reporting. Ethically, this approach can lead to unsubstantiated claims of success. An approach that selectively reports only positive results while ignoring negative or neutral outcomes is fundamentally unethical and professionally damaging. This constitutes misrepresentation and undermines the credibility of the public relations function. It violates the principle of honesty and accuracy in reporting, and can lead to poor strategic decisions based on incomplete or skewed information. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve clearly defining campaign objectives and desired outcomes before the campaign begins. This should be followed by identifying relevant, measurable KPIs that directly correlate with these objectives. During and after the campaign, data should be collected systematically and analyzed using appropriate methodologies to assess performance against the defined KPIs. Reporting should be transparent, presenting both successes and challenges, and offering actionable insights for future strategies. This ensures that evaluation is a continuous process that informs and improves public relations practice. Question 19. Investigation of a public relations campaign for a new sustainable energy product launch reveals the following proposed objectives. 1. To significantly increase public awareness of the product's environmental benefits. 2. To secure positive coverage in at least 3 national business publications by the end of the fiscal year. 3. To foster a greater sense of community among early adopters through online engagement. Which set of proposed objectives best aligns with the principles of setting measurable, effective public relations goals for this campaign? Option A. Objective 1, Objective 2, and Objective 3 as stated, assuming significant increase, positive coverage, and greater sense of community are understood internally. Option B. Objective 2 and Objective 3, with Objective 1 being refined to include specific metrics for public awareness and a defined time frame. Option C. Objective 1 and Objective 3, as they focus on broader impact and stakeholder sentiment, which are more crucial than specific publication targets. Option D. Objective 2, as it is the only objective with a clear, quantifiable target and time frame. The correct answer is B. Objective 2 and Objective 3, with Objective 1 being refined to include specific metrics for public awareness and a defined time frame. Explanation. This scenario presents a common challenge in public relations, translating broad organizational goals into specific, actionable, and measurable objectives for a campaign. The professional challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen objectives are not only aligned with the overarching strategy, but also demonstrably achievable and evaluable, thereby proving the value of public relations efforts. Without clear, measurable objectives, it becomes impossible to assess campaign success, justify resource allocation, or learn for future initiatives. The correct approach involves setting objectives that are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound, SMART. This framework ensures that the public relations team has a clear target to aim for and a defined method for evaluating progress and success. For instance, an objective like increase positive media mentions by 15% within the next fiscal quarter is SMART. It is specific positive media mentions, measurable 15% increase, achievable assuming baseline data and realistic targets, relevant to brand reputation, and time-bound within the next fiscal quarter. This aligns with professional best practices and the ethical imperative to demonstrate accountability and effectiveness in public relations practice, ensuring that efforts contribute tangibly to organizational goals. An incorrect approach would be to set vague or aspirational objectives that lack clear metrics. For example, aiming to enhance brand reputation or improve stakeholder engagement, without defining how these will be measured or within what time frame is problematic. Such objectives are not measurable, making it impossible to determine if the campaign has been successful. This failure to establish clear, quantifiable targets can lead to misallocation of resources, difficulty in demonstrating ROI, and a lack of accountability, which are all detrimental to professional practice. Another incorrect approach would be to set objectives that are unrealistic or unachievable given the available resources, budget, or market conditions. For instance, aiming to achieve 100% positive media coverage for a controversial product launch within a week might be technically specific and time-bound, but it is likely unachievable and therefore not a sound objective. This can lead to disappointment, demotivation, and a perception of failure, undermining the credibility of the public relations function. A further incorrect approach might be to set objectives that are not relevant to the organization's overall strategic goals. For example, focusing solely on increasing social media likes if the primary organizational goal is to drive sales through a specific product launch would be a misaligned objective. While social media engagement might be a secondary benefit, it does not directly contribute to the core strategic aim, making the objective irrelevant to the broader business purpose. The professional decision-making process for similar situations requires a thorough understanding of the organization's strategic priorities, a realistic assessment of available resources, and a commitment to setting objectives that are both ambitious and attainable. It involves collaborative discussion with stakeholders to ensure alignment and buy-in, followed by the rigorous application of the SMART framework to define clear, measurable outcomes. Regular monitoring and evaluation against these objectives are crucial for adaptive management and demonstrating the impact of public relations initiatives. Question 20. Quality control measures reveal that a new PR initiative focuses exclusively on crafting press releases that highlight only the company's achievements, with no mechanism for receiving or responding to public feedback. Which of the following best defines public relations in this context, considering the initiative's limitations? Option A. Strategic management function that builds mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its publics through two-way communication. Option B. The management of an organization's interactions with the media. Option C. The dissemination of positive information about an organization to enhance its public image. Option D. The process of responding to and managing negative publicity and crises. The correct answer is A. A strategic management function that builds mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its publics through two-way communication. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires a nuanced understanding of public relations beyond mere communication. The core of the challenge lies in distinguishing between genuine relationship building and manipulative information dissemination, a distinction crucial for maintaining public trust and adhering to ethical PR principles. The risk assessment here involves evaluating the intent and impact of communication activities. The correct approach is to define public relations as a strategic management function focused on building mutually beneficial relationships between an organization and its publics through two-way communication. This definition aligns with established professional bodies' principles, emphasizing research, planning, execution, and evaluation race model as integral to PR practice. It acknowledges that PR is not just about broadcasting messages, but about understanding public opinion, adapting organizational behavior, and fostering dialogue. This strategic, relationship-centric view is ethically sound as it prioritizes transparency, honesty, and long-term engagement over short-term gains achieved through deceptive means. An approach that defines public relations solely as the dissemination of positive information about an organization fails to acknowledge the two-way communication aspect and the importance of understanding public sentiment. This narrow view risks leading to a one-sided, potentially misleading communication strategy, which can erode trust and damage an organization's reputation if negative feedback or criticism is ignored or suppressed. Ethically, this approach is flawed as it prioritizes organizational interests over the public's right to accurate and balanced information. Another incorrect approach defines public relations as simply managing media relations. While media relations are a component of PR, they are not the entirety of the discipline. Focusing solely on media can lead to a reactive rather than proactive strategy, neglecting other crucial publics such as employees, customers, investors, and community stakeholders. This limited scope fails to encompass the broader strategic function of PR in building and maintaining relationships across diverse groups, potentially overlooking significant reputational risks and opportunities. Defining public relations as crisis management overlooks the proactive and ongoing nature of PR. Crisis management is a critical aspect of PR, but it is a response to specific situations rather than the overarching definition of the profession. A PR strategy that is solely focused on crisis management would be reactive and fail to build the strong relationships and positive reputation that can mitigate the impact of crises in the first place. This definition neglects the essential functions of research, planning, and relationship building that are fundamental to effective public relations. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough assessment of the proposed activities against the core principles of public relations: strategic intent, two-way communication, relationship building, and ethical conduct. Professionals should ask, does this activity aim to build genuine understanding and trust? Is it based on research and feedback? Does it involve listening as much as speaking? Does it uphold honesty and transparency? By adhering to these questions, practitioners can ensure their work aligns with the strategic and ethical foundations of public relations.